Unsolved airplane mysteries. Imagine an airplane taking off from the ground, fully equipped, with an experienced crew and calm passengers. Everything seems perfect, navigation systems working flawlessly, fuel levels full, weather conditions ideal. But suddenly, the plane vanishes without a trace. Not for days, not weeks, not even months, but for years, leaving the world shocked and puzzled. People wonder where the aircraft went and what happened to everyone on board. Then, years later, the same plane suddenly reappears. When it lands, the pilot only asks for the time and the date, as if trying to understand how many years have passed. Upon being told, the pilot reacts with astonishment and fear, and mysteriously, the plane takes off again. This is not a movie, not fiction, and not a dramatization. These are real, fact-based aviation events. Hello, everyone. We have brought you a video covering the world's 10 most mysterious airplane disappearances, cases that continue to baffle scientists, investigators, and aviation experts. Before we dive into the stories, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Plane nitrogen monoxide, Point 1. Pan Am Flight 914, the airplane that disappeared and returned. In the mid-1950s, Pan Am Flight 914 departed from New York City, bound for Miami, Florida. It was a routine domestic flight, expected to last just a few hours. On board were dozens of passengers, including men, women, airline staff, and experienced pilots. The captain, Captain Robert Briscoe, was a seasoned aviator with thousands of flight hours. First Officer James Conrad assisted him, while the cabin crew included 4 senior attendants with decades of experience. Families, businessmen, and regular travelers filled the aircraft. All pre-flight inspections were completed. Fuel levels were correct. Weather was clear, and communications with air traffic control were normal. Shortly after takeoff, as the aircraft descended into the sky, it suddenly vanished from radar. There was no distress signal, no mayday call, and no indication of mechanical failure. Search operations were immediately launched, spanning air, sea, and coastal stations. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Nothing was found. No wreckage, no luggage, no bodies. Eventually, the flight was officially declared lost, and all passengers were presumed dead. Years later, an extraordinary report emerged. Air traffic controllers in Venezuela detected an unidentified aircraft entering their airspace. The plane requested permission to land. When asked for identification, the pilot reportedly responded with the same flight number, 914. Records indicated that this was the same plane that had disappeared decades earlier. The aircraft landed safely. Witnesses claimed the plane appeared outdated, almost frozen in time, unlike modern aircraft. Officials approached the cockpit, where Captain Briscoe allegedly asked what year it was. When informed that it was decades after his original departure, he reportedly reacted with shock and confusion. He insisted that only a few hours had passed since takeoff. The passengers, according to accounts, experienced the same time anomaly. For them, the flight had lasted only a few hours. Before authorities could fully investigate, the aircraft took off again and disappeared without a trace. No official passenger lists, photographs, or confirmations were ever released. Aviation authorities deny any record of this landing, but researchers argue that early records were often incomplete or lost. Was this a case of time distortion? An unknown atmospheric phenomenon? Or an exaggeration of events over decades? The mystery of Pan Am Flight 914 remains one of the most astonishing aviation cases ever reported. Plane nitrogen monoxide. 2. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370, the modern-day disappearance. Now let us move from legend to documented reality. On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 departed Kuala Lumpur International Airport, bound for Beijing, China. On board were 239 people, including passengers from multiple countries and 12 crew members. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah was highly experienced, with thousands of flight hours. First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid assisted him. The aircraft was a Boeing 777, equipped with advanced navigation, radar, and communication systems. The flight began normally. Passengers settled in. The crew carried out standard procedures, and initial communication with air traffic control was routine. Then, without warning, all communications stopped. The transponder was turned off. Military radar briefly detected the aircraft, but soon it vanished completely from all tracking systems. No distress call, no mayday, nothing. The subsequent search operation became the largest and most expensive in aviation history. Multiple countries joined the effort. Satellites scanned the Indian Ocean. Ships and submarines scoured deep waters. Months and years passed. Only small debris pieces washed ashore on remote islands, later confirmed to be from MH370. The main wreckage, cockpit voice recorder, and flight data recorder were never recovered. Investigators explored every possible explanation: mechanical failure, fire, pilot action, hijacking, decompression, or sabotage. None could fully account for the aircraft's disappearance. Families remain without closure. The case revealed frightening gaps in aviation tracking systems and remains a haunting example of how even modern technology cannot fully safeguard against the unknown. One airplane allegedly disappeared and returned decades later, challenging our understanding of time. Another aircraft vanished in the modern digital age, showing that even today, the skies hold mysteries beyond human comprehension. These two cases set the stage for a series of unsolved airplane mysteries, each more puzzling than the last. Plane No. 3, Star Tiger, the disappearing airliner. In January 1948, Star Tiger, a British South American Airways Avro Tudor 4, departed Lisbon, Portugal, en route to Bermuda. On board were 25 passengers, including British nationals, a couple of crew members, and experienced pilots. Captain James Green was a seasoned pilot with thousands of hours of flight experience. Weather reports indicated normal conditions, and the flight plan was standard, passing through Atlantic air corridors. Initially, communications were routine. However, shortly after crossing the Atlantic, radio contact suddenly stopped. No distress calls were received, and the aircraft disappeared from radar. Search operations were launched immediately, involving military and civilian aircraft, ships, and radar stations. Days passed, and no wreckage or debris was found. Families of passengers were left without closure, and investigators could not explain why the aircraft simply vanished in a region without extreme weather. The disappearance of Star Tiger remains one of the earliest recorded modern aviation mysteries, demonstrating that even in peacetime, commercial flights can simply vanish without warning. Experts have speculated on various possibilities: sudden turbulence or microbursts, navigational errors, sudden mechanical failure, or even unusual electromagnetic atmospheric phenomena that could affect the plane's instruments. Yet, decades later, no definitive evidence has emerged. Star Tiger is a chilling reminder of the vulnerabilities of early aviation and of the unknown risks that still lurk above our oceans. Plane nitrogen monoxide Point 4, Star Ariel, the Atlantic vanishing. Following just months later, Star Ariel, another Avro Tudor operated by the same airline, departed Bermuda for Kingston, Jamaica, in January 1949. On board were 20 passengers, crew members, and Captain Frank L. Irving, an experienced pilot. Everything about the aircraft was standard. Maintenance logs were up to date, the crew experienced, and the weather forecast appeared favorable. Yet approximately 2 hours after takeoff, the plane vanished from radar without transmitting any distress signal. Search operations began immediately, involving ships and aircraft scanning hundreds of square miles of ocean. Only minor debris was ever reported, though nothing was conclusively identified as part of Star Ariel. The mystery deepened because the disappearance occurred in a well-monitored air corridor with established communication channels. Some suggest sudden mechanical failure, while others theorize strange meteorological conditions or electrical anomalies. Just like Star Tiger, no bodies, wreckage, or explanations were ever officially confirmed. The twin tragedies of Star Tiger and Star Ariel have left aviation experts baffled for over 70 years. Two aircraft, operated by experienced crews in well-planned routes, vanished in the Atlantic Ocean with no warning, no signals, and no trace. These cases forced major revisions in tracking, communication, and emergency protocols. Yet the mystery remains unsolved. Plain nitrogen monoxide, 05 Flying Tiger Line Flight 739. The mystery over the Pacific. On March 16, 1962, Flying Tiger Line Flight 739, a military charter flight, departed Taiwan, then Formosa, en route to Clark Air Base in the Philippines. On board were 93 U.S. Army personnel, mostly soldiers returning from training exercises, and 3 civilian crew members, including experienced pilots Captain Robert Ellis, First Officer James Thompson, and Flight Engineer William Clark. The aircraft was a Douglas DC-6, fully maintained, with routine pre-flight checks completed. Weather reports indicated normal conditions along the flight path across the Western Pacific. Everything started as a routine flight. Communications with air traffic control were normal. However, after crossing the Philippine Sea, radio contact was abruptly lost. The aircraft disappeared from radar without sending any distress signal or indication of mechanical failure. Immediate search operations were launched by the U.S. Air Force and Navy, involving multiple ships, aircraft, and sonar sweeps. Days turned into weeks, and no wreckage or survivors were ever found. Eyewitness reports from nearby ships suggested unusual weather patterns in the region that day, but nothing extreme enough to explain a total disappearance. Investigators explored multiple theories: catastrophic mechanical failure, sudden severe turbulence, sabotage, or even a missile or accidental military exercise involvement. Others speculated about unknown atmospheric anomalies over the Pacific that could have caused the plane to vanish without a trace. The loss of Flight 739 resulted in the largest unexplained military aviation disappearance of its time. Families of the soldiers were left without closure, and the U.S. military classified some details of the investigation. Even decades later, Flight 739 remains one of the most haunting aviation mysteries, showing that even highly monitored and maintained flights can disappear in an instant. Plane No. 6 DC-3 mystery flights, multiple cases. The Douglas DC-3 is one of the most iconic aircraft in aviation history, yet it is also associated with a series of mysterious disappearances during the 1940s and 1950s. Numerous flights carrying passengers and cargo across the U.S., South America, and the Pacific vanished without warning. One notable case involves a DC-3 departing from San Juan, Puerto Rico, en route to Miami in 1948, with 32 passengers and 3 crew members. Routine communications were made after takeoff, but shortly thereafter, all contact ceased. Search efforts by land, sea, and air found no trace of the aircraft. Personal belongings, luggage, and bodies were never recovered. Other DC-3 flights vanished under similar circumstances, often over remote ocean regions or dense jungles. Investigators speculated about navigational errors, sudden storms, electrical malfunctions, or mechanical failure. However, some flights vanished without any hint of emergency, distress signals, or wreckage, leaving investigators completely puzzled. Plain nitrogen monoxide, 7-Air France Flight 447, the Atlantic vanishing. These DC-3 disappearances illustrate the vulnerability of early commercial and military aviation. Despite trained pilots, routine maintenance, and careful planning, planes can vanish completely, leaving no trace. Over time, these cases contributed to the development of modern radar tracking, emergency beacons, and air traffic communication protocols. Yet the mysteries of many DC-3 flights remain unresolved. On June 1, 2009, Air France Flight 447, an Airbus A330, departed Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, bound for Paris, France. There were 228 people on board, including passengers from more than 30 countries and 12 crew members. Captain Marc Dubois, First Officers David Robert and Pierre Cauchy were highly experienced, each with thousands of flight hours. The aircraft was modern, fully equipped with advanced navigation, autopilot systems, and weather radar. The flight began normally, climbing to cruising altitude over the Atlantic Ocean. For most of the journey, communications were routine. However, over the intertropical convergence zone, the plane entered severe thunderstorms. Suddenly, autopilot disengaged, and multiple alerts, including stall warnings, sounded. For nearly 3 hours, no communication was received from the aircraft. Debris and bodies were eventually discovered floating in the Atlantic, but the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder were recovered nearly 2 years later. Analysis revealed a combination of airspeed sensor icing, pilot confusion, and mismanagement during high-altitude stall conditions. Imagine the terror in the cockpit as alarms blared and the plane struggled in relentless storm conditions. For passengers, hours of uncertainty must have felt like an eternity, trapped high above the ocean with no control. Could anything similar happen today if technology fails in extreme conditions? Air France Flight 447 disappeared into the Atlantic, leaving only scattered debris and lost lives, highlighting that even in the modern age, nature and human limitations create unsolved mysteries. Plain nitrogen monoxide. 8. The flight of the Southern Cross. In 1928, the Southern Cross, a Fokker FVIIB 3 meters trimotor aircraft, took off from Sydney, Australia, aiming for New Zealand, with plans to cross the Tasman Sea. On board were Charles Kingsford Smith, an Australian aviation pioneer, navigator Charles Oom, and 2 crew members. The aircraft had completed multiple pioneering flights and was celebrated for long-distance achievements. During one leg of the Tasman Sea journey, the plane disappeared from view completely. Despite extensive searches by ships and planes from Australia and New Zealand, no wreckage or trace of the aircraft was found. Radio communication ceased after routine updates, and eyewitnesses reported sudden storm fronts that may have overwhelmed the plane. Imagine being a passenger in 1928, trusting early aviation technology, flying over open ocean, suddenly engulfed by unknown storm forces. The fear, the uncertainty. It remains impossible to measure. Could such a disappearance happen again in today's world, in the age of satellites and GPS? The Southern Cross vanished over the Tasman Sea, leaving no trace, showing the extreme risks faced by early aviators and the enduring mysteries of unexplored skies. Plain nitrogen monoxide. 9. Stardust, the vanishing over the Andes. In 1947, the British South American Airways flight Stardust, a de Havilland DH-88 Comet, took off from Buenos Aires, Argentina, bound for Santiago, Chile. The aircraft was a small, fast passenger plane, carrying 5 crew members and 6 passengers. Captain T.H. Warren was experienced in South American routes, and the crew was trained for high-altitude Andean flights. Weather reports indicated clear skies at departure, though conditions over the Andes are notoriously unpredictable. The plane transmitted routine radio messages during the climb, but after the final message, a cryptic phrase reportedly stating, "Stendig," all communication ceased. For decades, the meaning of this last message and the fate of the aircraft remained unsolved. Extensive searches were launched immediately. However, due to the remote, snow-covered peaks of the Andes, No wreckage was found for over 50 years. Families were left with no closure. Many theories arose: navigational errors, sudden storms, mechanical failure, or even sabotage. Theories about cryptic codes and possible radio misinterpretation persisted, and the mystery of Stendick became one of aviation history's most enduring enigmas. It was not until 1998 that a mountaineering expedition discovered the wreckage buried under ice and snow, with human remains of the crew and passengers remarkably preserved in the glacier. Investigators concluded that a combination of poor visibility, navigation mistakes, and high-altitude mountain turbulence caused the plane to crash into the Andes. Yet, the mystery of the final radio transmission and the sudden disappearance remained intriguing. Stardust vanished over the Andes, its story illustrating how remote terrain, sudden weather shifts, and human error can turn routine flights into decades-long mysteries. Imagine the terror and confusion on board as a sleek, fast plane suddenly becomes lost amidst towering mountains and unpredictable skies. Plane No. 10. The Flying Tiger Line Flight 739. On March 16, 1962, the Flying Tiger Line Flight 739, a Lockheed L-1049 Super Constellation, departed Miami, Florida, for Macau with a planned stop in Homestead Air Force Base for refueling. On board were 96 U.S. Army personnel, 11 crew members, and additional passengers. The aircraft was fully functional, well-maintained, and operated by an experienced civilian crew contracted by the military. No distress signals were sent. Military and civilian search operations immediately began, including ships, planes, and satellite scanning. Weeks of exhaustive search produced no wreckage, no bodies, and no definitive explanation. Only small, unverified reports of possible debris surfaced sporadically, leaving families and investigators with endless questions. Speculations about the disappearance include severe weather, sabotage, mechanical failure, and even extraordinary theories involving unknown atmospheric phenomena. To this day, no one can confirm the exact cause or location of the crash. The disappearance of Flight 739 became one of the largest unresolved military aviation mysteries, highlighting the vulnerability of even heavily monitored and technologically equipped flights. Imagine being on that flight, aware of nothing unusual, and then suddenly disappearing without a trace. Could this happen today despite satellite tracking, radar coverage, and real-time communications? The event remains a chilling reminder that some parts of our skies still harbor secrets we may never fully understand. Flight 739 disappeared with all passengers and crew, leaving behind an unsolved case that continues to mystify military and aviation historians. The plane vanished as if the sky itself had swallowed it, leaving only unanswered questions and sorrow for the families. Both stories demonstrate that time, geography, and sudden events can create mysteries that endure for decades. Imagine these situations in today's high-tech aviation environment. Even now, the skies may hold secrets beyond human comprehension. Disclaimer: all events described are based on historical records, research, and witness accounts. Some elements remain subject to debate and mystery. This content is for informational and entertainment purposes, aiming to explore unsolved aviation phenomena. Remember, like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy uncovering aviation mysteries. Every story, every flight, teaches us that the skies above are full of wonder, risk, and secrets yet to be understood.